What's up and welcome back to Bardown Talking Hockey, episode number 126, presented by the Barroom Network. My name is Vinny Parisi, and I am a certified G and a bona fide stud, and you can't teach that. And this right here, this is Frankie Mueller, and he's 7 foot tall, and you can't teach that. Frank, what the hell are you doing wearing an LSU hat?
I'm ready. I'm ready for college football.
You're ready for college football. You know, the Notre Dame fans around here, we got some watching at all times. They're not going to like that hat there, my son.
Tough.
I like LSU. It's where my guy Joe Burrow went. Saw him play in person. It's one of my favorite things I've ever done was see the SEC title game where
I think why I
Joseph
like it
Burrow.
so. You're lagging really bad.
Am I still?
Hello? Yeah. It's hard to because then I try to talk, but I think you're done talking. It just makes it really tough. You're lagging. You're not even moving. Could you hear me? Oh, I think we lost VP. How's everybody doing? Caitlin says, "Go Tigers." You got that right. I think I fell in love with the LSU Tigers because of their color scheme. I like their colors a lot.
How's that?
Good for now.
You know, that always happens to me. No, it's good for the show. When I come into this room, it connects me to the extender, and the extender does not compete with my computer for whatever reason. It works for Roku, it works for everything else, just not my computer. And if I don't catch that it made the switch before we go live, I'm screwed. But you were saying LSU.
I like their colors too. I think that's a big reason why I like them so much.
Hell yeah.
Like
LSU's awesome. I love LSU.
I got my New Orleans shirt on too to match, so.
Hell yeah, you do. You certainly do, don't you?
I do.
Don't you there, boy? I'm looking for, any excuse to talk football at this point, but we were not going to get to football until we get into the meat and potatoes of period number 3. But before we get to period number 3, we got to get to period number 1. Do you know my dumbass almost said period number 2?
That's funny.
Like, I literally said before you got to get to period 3, you got to start with period number 2. I'm an idiot.
But you're right. You got to get to period 2 before you get to period 3.
But you can't do period 2 without doing period number 1 there, Frank.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be the first time you forgot to send it to period 1.
You know what? Shut up. Frank, we're going to argue with each other because we got a very special guest coming on at 2:30. So period 1 might be the shortest period 1 of all time, but we got plenty of time to yell at each other and tell each other why we're wrong. Okay. And we are going to start with a conversation piece that I came up with that came from an article for puckpros.com. Go read it. Will the Buffalo Sabres be a bona fide playoff team? Right now, we probably both agree they're on the bubble because we could probably each name 3 teams in each division that are better. For me, for sure, without any shadow of a doubt, the Maple Leafs, Panthers, Lightning, and probably Bruins are better than Buffalo. And in the Metro, for sure, the Devils, Carolina, maybe the Rangers, maybe the Penguins. The Sabres are going to have to overcome one of those teams if they want to make it to the playoffs. Will adding one of Patrick Kane, Tomas Tatar, Phil Kessel, or any of the other free agents that are available out there push them over the edge to become a playoff team, in your opinion?
Yeah, so here's the thing. I'm not as high up on the Panthers as you are. I wouldn't be surprised if they missed and Buffalo were to take their spot, or one of the other teams you mentioned. But, the Buffalo Sabres are on the rise. Last season, they only missed the playoffs by 1 point. And I think they're only going to get better or be just as good this year. So to answer your question, in theory, yes, any of the players you named, Kane, Tatar, Kessel, would make the Buffalo Sabres a playoff team because I think they might end up being a playoff team even if they didn't have any of those players. And I don't think by having any of those players is it going to make the team worse. I mean, Tage Thompson proved he's only getting better. You got Alex Tuch, Jeff Skinner, Dylan Cousins, the list of talents there. The Buffalo Sabres signed Eric Johnson to a 1-year deal this offseason. I think that should help the third line defense pairing a little bit more. I mean, he is a bit older. But you add some age to that young team that helps. The only red flag I see that could hinder their chances of making the playoffs this year is their goaltending situation. The 3 goalies they have signed are Devin Levi, Eric Comrie, and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Did that the best I can.
Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen.
So those Devin Levi, Eric Comrie, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Those are your 3 goalies that are signed for the Buffalo Sabres. This may cause some issues. You look at their time in the NHL, and it hasn't been a lot for them, but you haven't seen the results you'd like to see. But this Buffalo Sabres team is improving, but I think that that's going to be their major roadblock this year is their goaltending. But if one of these guys I named could break out, then maybe they will make it. I do think that, to answer your question, those 3 players, any of them would make them a playoff team. Because I think regardless, they have a chance to be a playoff team no matter what.
I think they have a chance too, but none of these 3 players would be the reason. I probably would leave them off the playoffs if we were to do it today. I haven't seen any training camps. I haven't seen any preseason games. Obviously, when we make those predictions, all comes after that. And, what I think of certain situations. I think Levi's the real deal. I like him in net. You got to start somewhere. Every goalie's a rookie to start, and he's got that pedigree we always talk about. For me, it's a matter of the Bruins because I don't see the other 7 teams missing playoffs. I just don't.
I don't think the Panthers are that good. I think last year was like a fluke.
I'm not trying to shit on your opinion, but they were in the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, I understand.
And they have Tkachuk
as the 16th
Barkov, but they have Tkachuk. And they underperformed in the regular season, though. They won the President's Trophy the year before. So the last 2 seasons, they've either been in the Stanley Cup final or the President's Trophy winner.
Correct.
And they have Tkachuk. They won that trade. Easy. They upgraded Huber. How do you upgrade Huberdeau? It's hard, right? Oh, well, the Panthers found a way to. And Verhaeghe scored 40, and they have Barkov and 2 goalies that they trust. And, the defense with Ekblad leading the way is unreal. Frickin' Uyghur was, or not Uyghur, who's the other one? Who replaced Uyghur? And had Montour. Unreal. For me, Buffalo, they have to hope for someone else's downfall. I think the most likely team is the Bruins. And that's kind of sad to say, and it's basically because of their depth down the middle. But I've never gone into a year thinking that there's a really good chance the same 8 make it again. Although it wouldn't be the same 8. You'd be flushing out the Islanders and putting in the Penguins, in my opinion, as we stand right now.
I'm interested to do our predictions because I don't think I'd have Florida or the Penguins in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think I would have both as of right now. But it's going to be interesting. We both agree Buffalo's a playoff bubble team. Neither of us are certain that they're a playoff team right now.
Yeah, I'm not 100%. I think they're right there, but if they're coming.
They are coming. I do think they go from, they might have 1 year where they sneak in, but then after that, it's like competing for the Eastern Conference Finals every single year. They're right below the Devils in terms of stock for the next 5 years. If I could rank every team in the Eastern Conference stock for the next 5 years, Devils would be 1, Buffalo would probably be 2.
That's fair.
Meaning if you could draft whoever's team makes it to the final the most times, and we all got to draft, I would take Buffalo 2nd overall.
That's fair.
In the East.
Yeah.
Maybe even in the league. They're damn good. They're damn good, and they have a lot of potential. Another question, article written on puckpros.com. Johnny Gaudreau, 73 points last season, first season with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Had a multitude of injuries around him. It's an interesting team. We both think they're going to be better. Neither of us think they're going to make the playoffs, I don't think. But Gaudreau is going to have some really good line mates next year. Will Johnny Gaudreau break Artemi Panarin's single-season point record for the Blue Jackets? That stands at 87 points. Can Johnny Hockey get to point number 88?
Johnny Gaudreau is capable of scoring 100 points if he has the right team around him. That's his ceiling. He could go past that. We've seen that. He scored 115 points with the Calgary Flames in the 21-22 season, but he also scored 99 points in the 2018-19 season with the Calgary Flames. So 100 points is right where he belongs, and not necessarily a ceiling, but a ceiling that he's very capable of reaching. It's like one of those push ceilings that you see in school. You could push through and go through the ceiling a little bit. That's how I think of it. This year he's going to have much better talent around him. He had much better talent around him on the teams with Calgary than he does with the Blue Jackets. And last year with the Blue Jackets, he only had 74 points. It's a very, very down year for his standards. However, when you take a look at the team around him, there was not much talent there. And to compile 74 points on a team that finished 30th in the league in the standings, that says a lot, at least to me. The Columbus Blue Jackets should have a much more productive year, and it's only a matter of time before he breaks it, in my opinion. He's also most likely to get some power play time with Fantilli. This could help him out a ton. We don't know how these two are going to work together. We saw what Edmonton did on the power play with McDavid and Draisaitl, two completely different players. But, if things work well on the power play, it's gonna improve his point production tremendously. And that's something he didn't have last year. Is he going to break it this year? He might. I think the team improved greatly, like I said. But if it's not this year, then I think you could bank on it for next year.
Yeah, I think Goudreau will eventually break it. I'm not positive it's this year, but I think I would lock in if I was to bet. Like if someone gave me $100 and I had to bet on that either way, I think I would say over.
I think I would too, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm not confident.
Yeah.
Next year, I'm confident.
He's only gone over 87 points twice in his career.
He's a 99 and 115.
Yeah. Now, very, very good player. Very, very good player. He's a star. He's an all-star, perennial all-star. He'll probably be Columbus's all-star this year. I think he's super talented. There are years where he just looks so dynamic. I'd like to see him shoot more. Obviously, that would lead to more goal scoring. His assist number last year was right around where it usually is in his career. It was the goals that were down, and that's why he was in the 70s rather than the 80s or 90s. He scored 40 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. If he scored 40 last year, he'd have right around the same number of points.
And I think that's due to the fact that the Blue Jackets aren't well-rounded as that Calgary Flames team was.
Exactly. A lot of things that Johnny Gaudreau is doing, it's helping set up other people. There aren't that many people setting shit up for him, though. So hopefully he's able to figure that out. I am rooting for him to break that record.
Fantilli, man, on the power play. They're going to get time together.
Yes, they're probably going to play with each other at even strength, I would think, too.
So I think that could help him out tremendously.
Absolutely, Frank. I'm with you. So we're going to move on to the next one. I think this is going to be a little bit longer of a conversation. That's why I saved it for last. And we are waiting for our great guest, Dan Rice, to show up at 2:30, where we're going to talk about some PWHL. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Frank, John Buccigross went on a little hockey rant on Twitter the other day, just firing off responses to people's questions. Someone asked him about the top two prospects from last year's draft. They weren't the top two picks, but they were certainly the top two prospects. He gave point predictions for Connor Bedard and Adam Fantilli. We'll start with Connor Bedard. He predicted 36 goals, 31 assists, 67 points. Where do you lie on the goals, assists, and points for Bucci's prediction?
I think Connor Bedard will hit the over in points with ease. You know how I feel about the goals. I don't know necessarily about the 36 goals because to me, if he hits 30, 32, I'm happy with that. It's like, wow, that's great. And that's kind of where I see him being. I don't think he's going to have an Austin Matthews rookie year and score 40, but I don't know. The potential's there. But the point total over 67 just seems too easy. The assist 31 seems a bit too easy. I think that I wouldn't be surprised if he has upwards of 50 assists. And if he's a point per game player, I would not be surprised. 32 goals, 50 assists. How you doing? Perfect. That's kind of where I have him pegged this year. There's a lot of pressure on Connor Bedard this season, but I don't really think he's fazed by it at all. If he goes out and play his game, he'll have no problem achieving Bucci's point total. I think Bucci kind of shit on him a little bit. 67 points, it just seems too low. I disagree with Bucci tremendously.
18-year-olds never really get more than that in the NHL.
I understand that, but this is
no, Bedard. I know the difference between Bedard, but Matthews scored 40 and he only had 69 points.
Now Fantilli's is a lot better, but I don't know. I don't agree with Bucci at all.
See, I think Bedard pushes 40 goals. I think he's right around accurate with the 31 assists.
Really?
The Hawks are terrible.
I got him at 50.
The Hawks are bad.
I understand that.
His line mates are going to be Taylor Hall and Reichel. Reichel's never scored like more than 7 in a season, and Taylor Hall is pushing 20 if he's lucky.
Dude, Johnny Gaudreau had over 50 assists on a shitty Columbus team.
Johnny Gaudreau is a well-established 10-year veteran, not an 18-year-old.
I understand that, but I like the Hawks team more than Columbus's team last year from this year.
Oh, I don't know if I'm with you on that. I can't get there.
Right.
Their goaltending and defense are terrible. They're so bad. He's going to have to do a lot of scoring himself. For my prediction for Connor Bedard, I got him at 41 goals and 29 assists in a 70-point season. So that's kind of my thoughts for him this season. I like the over for Bucci's total on goals. I'm taking the under on assists. I don't love the situation that he's in with forwards, but he's going to be entertaining as an individual. But because my goals outweigh the assists, I will take the over on points. You know how I feel about Bedard. This isn't a poo-poo on Bedard conversation.
Not at all.
It's been 6 years since a teenager has won the Calder Trophy.
I just think I don't know. Yeah, we're kind of opposite.
Yeah, but you got to look at situations.
I think his situation's great, to be honest with you.
No, it's horrible.
We'll agree to disagree. That's fine.
We're gonna have to because the team is bad, and the 5-on-5 play will be okay. I think they'll get lots of looks on the power play, of course. Taylor Hall's shooting percentage is way down since the year he scored 39. He just can't seem to beat goalies. It's kind of strange. But, I mean, we'll see if things change wearing a Blackhawks sweater. But I like him scoring a crap ton of goals. I think what's Lucas Reichel going to do this season? I think 20-20-40 would be wonderful for Reichel. And if Reichel's 20-20-40, Bedard ain't having 50 assists. Same thing I would give Hall. Hall be 15, 40, 55. Right? Like that's kind of where I'm at for those guys. And if Bedard leads the line in scoring, I think that'll be a testament to what's to come when he develops more and he gets closer, to being in his prime. But the NHL is a hard place to play if you're under 20. And Austin Matthews is the last teenager to win the Calder Trophy. And he had 40 goals, 29 assists, and 69 points. Bedard will probably be right around there is my thought. But sometimes these generational players, they can be interesting in year one. Like Jack Hughes, I wouldn't necessarily call him a generational player, but he was awful in his rookie year. I had him at 20, 30, 50 in his rookie year. He didn't even come close. It didn't even come close. And now he's a superstar, 99 points in his first true breakout season. And ESPN has him coming 7th in scoring next year with 107 points. Like Connor Bedard, he could easily by year 3 be a 100-point guy, but Taylor Hall and a rookie Lucas Reichel won't be his line mates anymore. And on the power play, he'll have Jones, Hall, probably not Reichel. They might put Corey Perry as the net front guy or Foligno. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Moving on to Fantilli, though, 30-30-60. From John Buccigross. What do you think?
Fantilli to me is a different story. I know how good he is, but I don't know if I feel comfortable handing out 30 goals to him in his rookie year. I mean, great if he does. Rookie years are tough. You only get one chance at making an impact as a rookie, but my point total I have for him ranges in the 47 to 55 point range. It's kind of a large point range. You got an 8-point difference in there. If he had 25 goals and 30 assists, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. I could also see him not performing to his fullest potential and people ripping on him for having a down year. But on the other hand, much like I said about Johnny Gaudreau's point production going up on an improved Blue Jackets team, the same could work out for Adam Fantilli. The power play time possibly playing with Gaudreau will play into a factor in his point total, but I just don't see 60 points in Fantilli's future for his rookie campaign.
I couldn't agree more. Fantilli in a better situation line-wise than Bedard, in a worse situation or in an equally bad situation team-wise. In my opinion, I think the Hawks and Blue Jackets will have right around the same number of points, more than last year, but not quite maybe 11th or 12th in the conference. I don't think he gets to 30 goals. It's very hard. 30 assists is about right for me. I like the
I
assist
have him at
numbers
30
for both
assists.
of them. I like Bedard's playmaking will improve, but he's a shooter first. Fantilli's just kind of like good at everything right now. He's a little more in his body, I think, too. He's a little more mature as physically. Not as a player, I'm saying like physically. Like he's a bigger, stronger dude, I think, right now. And Bedard's a better skater. But Fantilli will have Goudreau. The Hawks don't have a player near Goudreau to play with Bedard. Um, I I think that'll help him score some goals. But I kind of like the number you threw out there, 25, 30, 55. I think that's right around where we will find Adam Fantilli. Um, I've been doing the more and more research I do, though, leads to me thinking that if these guys like are both nominated for Rookie of the Year, it will buck so many trends from the last even 10 years. McDavid probably would have won if he played the whole year, and he would have been a rookie to win, and then we would have had back-to-back rookies, McDavid and Matthews. But like those two are always different than everybody else. Before them, I think it was the Nate Dogg in 2013. So I guess it would have been 14 because he was drafted in 13. And he won the Rookie of the Year as a 18-year-old or a 19-year-old. For Bedard and Fantilli to do it, they would have to beat out some guys who are coming into this league with an extra 2-3 years of experience. We're talking about Logan Cooley and Luke Hughes and Levi and all sorts of guys. So I think for the most part, those point totals that Bucci has put out are going to be roughly right. I just think for both guys, I really hope people don't make them feel like they're not doing enough at 18 years old, because playing in the NHL at 18 years old is borderline impossible. And how many guys from this last draft class are going to play in the NHL as a rookie?
5.
It might be less. Maybe Leo Carlson will make the Ducks. Fantilli will make the Blue Jackets. Bedard will make the Hawks, certainly. I don't think Zach Benson's going to play for Buffalo. I know most of the guys that are going back to college are going back to college, but I don't know. I'm getting greedy. I want the Hawks to get Max Celebrini. I'm going to be watching a lot of Boston College. If Celebrini and Bedard were on the same team, they would F some shit up for the next 10 years. So, I don't know.
We agree on Fantilli, disagree on Bedard.
Yeah. Well, I think we don't disagree on Bedard the player. We disagree on his situation.
No, we disagree on his point total.
You have more assists. I have more goals.
I got him at point per game, 82 points.
Oh, yeah, that would stun me. He would have way more assists than if he's point per game. They undersold his playmaking ability.
We'll see.
Because if you could have 40 plus assists at 18,
maybe he'll have more goals than I think and less assists, like you think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Do you agree? You kind of control your own destiny with goals sometimes. Yeah, it's nice to have a Nicholas Backstrom. 700 assists makes it easy for you to tap them in. I think Patrick Kane did that for Patrick Sharp a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason Patrick Sharp never scored more than 25 anywhere else. But, for the most part, if you have a sick shot, you're going to score your goals.
Yeah.
And Bedard's going to be fed power play time. It wouldn't surprise me if he plays 1 minute and 40 seconds out of every 2 minutes on a power play. He'll be on the ice up a goal with the empty net. He'll be on the ice down a goal. No, he probably won't have too many empty netters, actually. They don't normally put 18-year-olds in those defensive situations. But he'll be on the ice certainly trying to tie it up late.
Mm-hmm.
And the Hawks are going to be down a goal with 2 minutes left a lot this season. And I'm willing to make a prediction. Bedard ties it at least twice. At least twice. Maybe more. Bedard will tie the game with the goalie pulled at least twice.
I could see it.
And yeah, that's extra goals, man. That's goals that other guys aren't going to be afforded the opportunity to pick up. Assists, though. Who else is scoring goals on the Hawks regularly? Who
I
else?
think Lucas Reichel's going to have a really good year.
So do I. So do I. But Andreas Athanasiou got 20 by the skin of his you-know-what.
Right.
And who else got 20? Some other idiot got 20. Did frickin' Taylor Radish reach 20?
Yeah, I think he did.
Yeah, okay. The Radish for sure not doing that again. And Andreas Athanasiou certainly not doing that again. I could see, I don't know about Hall. You know what? You know who knows a little bit about Taylor Hall?
Who's that?
A good friend of the program, a good colleague, a good friend, somebody I admire very much. We are going to get to the interview with Dan Rice in period number 2. Our next guest that we'd like to welcome onto the show, somebody who's been a great friend of the program, came on a couple times. We're having them on again in response to some big news that came in the NHL. Not the NHL, in the hockey world. Of course, we're talking about Dan Rice of the Ice Garden and a contributor to Pucks and Pitchforks as well, alongside me. Dan, how you doing, man? Dan, this happened last time we were on. We can't hear you for whatever reason.
I like the hat.
That's a sick hat. Dan's always looking good.
What kind of hat is it?
That's never a problem with Dan.
Michigan? Or Minnesota?
Yeah, it's Minnesota.
Minnesota?
Yeah. Oh, row the boat.
Can't
What's
hear
his
you,
name?
though.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Dan. Frank, row the boat comes from their coach, PJ Fleck.
Yeah.
PJ Fleck was the coach of Western Michigan, and that was like in the heart of NIU being good, and Western Michigan's their biggest rival, I would say, either them or Central.
Dan's ready for college football.
Hell yeah, Dan is. Dan knows what he's doing.
Sorry, go ahead.
They put paddle boat paddles on their jerseys for certain games because of the row the boat slogan from their coach.
That's funny.
So it is funny. I feel bad because the last time Dan was here, the same exact thing happened where we weren't able to hear him. Is it something that we're doing? Is it something in the water?
I don't know. There's not much we're doing.
You're the technology guy.
We're not doing anything.
You're the technology guy. Here,
Dan comes in, we pull him up, and we say, "Hey, Dan, how you doing?" And then we can't hear him. I don't know what to tell you.
All right, Frank. Let's play that back again. You're Dan, and we would now like to welcome on Dan. Oh my god! Those who are listening to the audio version are going insane right now, wondering like, what the hell are these guys doing?
Like, it doesn't happen with us. Like when we get on.
No, I mean,
your connection was a little different. It could be anything. It could be like something with his computer. Like, I don't know his setup. I don't know if he's plugged in. He's got a mic plugged in. If he's using a mic coming from the computer, built into the computer, I don't know. Otherwise, like, I can't really help him. And he hasn't come back yet, so we could maybe he did find an issue that he's trying to fix right now. So, in the meantime, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm inspired to hear. I wonder if Dan went to it was a Golden Gopher. There's a chance he was. I wouldn't know though. I've never actually asked him that, so it's going to be interesting to see what comes of that. I'm just checking online to see if
is he good? Did he say anything to you?
No, he didn't say anything to me. I'm just curious if he did, but he didn't. I don't know. We'll wait for Dan. Frank, what's your favorite kind of hot dog?
Brand?
Yeah, like style, brand, whatever comes to mind when I say Frank.
I'm in the minority. I like a good Oscar Mayer wiener.
You think that puts you in the minority? Oscar Mayer, one of the most recognizable brands in the world.
Every time I mention it, like Oscar Mayer, who would want an Oscar Mayer dog? I'd rather Ballpark. I think Ballpark's overrated.
The Ballpark stinks.
I grew up with Ballpark, and I think that's why I don't like him as much anymore. I'll eat them, but when you grew up 15 years eating Ballpark and that's all they bought, then it's like after a while it gets old. And I liked Oscar Mayer because I always had it once in a while. I'd go to your house and have Oscar Mayer. I'd go to my grandma's house and have Oscar Mayer. And it was good for a change. And I think that's why I like Oscar Mayer now.
Yeah, those are the two cheap like kid brands. They both suck. I mean, they really do both suck. Vienna and Nathan's are the two premier hot dogs. Those are like adult hot dogs. When you go to a like hot dog establishment, they either have Nathan's or Oscar or Vienna, and that's how you make a good Chicago style. The reason I brought this up though, I was overhearing Katie listening to a podcast earlier today, and they were talking about the Wiener Circle. Have you ever gone to the Wiener Circle?
I don't think so. Doesn't sound familiar.
You've never even watched the TV show.
No, but I have a story to tell you when you're done. But go
There's
ahead.
there's a TV show about this place. It's called the Wiener Circle, and the Wiener Circle is a hot dog joint. It's close to Wrigley Field. Boys Town is really what it's close to.
Okay.
It is a hot dog place where you go in there and they're just a-holes the whole time to you. They'll rip on they would make fun of your dumb glasses and your stupid hair. They'd call me fat and
Yeah,
make
I
fun
like
of my
these
mustache.
glasses.
But they won't. All right, we got Dan back in the fold. Let's see if Dan has some audio. Daniel.
Can you hear me?
We can. Let's go.
It's weird. When I first came on, I tested the microphone and it was, like it went up like it was green, like it could hear me. And then you guys couldn't hear me. And then I just restarted it and I was testing the microphone and I got nothing. And I was like, let me go in and let's see what happens. Like, I figure things out, technology, especially just trial and error. Like, I make it go. So thanks for having me on, though. And I appreciate you dealing with my technical difficulties.
Of course, man. We love having you on. I've always said, I told Nick Villano one time, I was like, Dan Rice, man, he's so smart and he knows his shit. But before you start talking, I need to know what's up with the Minnesota Golden Gopher gear, because I'm going to be trying to check out a couple games of theirs. I don't have to go very far to see Wisconsin play in Madison. So whenever the Gophers are in town, I think my goal is to go see them once or twice this year.
I'll give you the short abridged version. I grew up in New York City. I live in New Jersey now. Loved college football, and there's not really teams around here. Like Rutgers doesn't count, like big teams, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Like Rutgers is Rutgers. Like everybody knows what the deal is there. And then the next like real closest team is, I guess, like Syracuse, like maybe Connecticut, UConn.
Mm-hmm.
But like I never really had like a favorite team. And I love the EA Sports NCAA football game. And, they always make you pick kind of like your favorite team. And like, I liked watching Florida State and Colorado back in the day, a few other teams. But they ask you to pick like your favorite team. And I was like, I don't know. I like the Gophers hockey team. Like I watched a lot of their games on ESPN2 back in the day when it was like Phil Kessel and Thomas Vanek. And again, same kind of situation where there's no local hockey teams really around here, at least, in 1995 that I knew about. So I was like, oh, Minnesota Gophers. Like I know Kessel, I know Vanek, I know the Devils ended up having a couple of guys from the Gophers. Paul Martin was one. Kyle Okposo, right? So I remember all those guys kind of coming up, and I just kind of always kind of gravitated to them and kind of followed them and kind of adopted them as my football team, because it's like I said, there's no real team to root out here for. I don't want to root for like a top dog. Like I want to kind of root for like an underdog where it's like exciting week to week. And they had a lot of bad seasons I followed, and the last like 4 or 5 years since PJ came aboard, it's been really fun. And he's undefeated in bowl games. They kind of got ruined by COVID, like a lot of teams. But the year before, they had a really good year where they were like 10-0 or 11-0, and that was the most fun I've had watching college football in a really long time. And I actually got to see them play at Rutgers that year. And I missed that. So that coincided with the game that Jack Hughes scored his first goal when he played against Quinn Hughes for the first time.
Day game against Vancouver. I'll never forget it.
So I bought the tickets for this football game, like the night before, because it was like $8. And I'm like, what are the chances of like, how many chances am I going to get to see the Gophers at 8-0 record in my backyard? Like Rutgers the stadium was like a 15-minute ride from my apartment, like free parking, like all that. And I was like, I've been to 1,000,001 Devils games. Yeah, it's Quinn versus Jack for the first time. I'll see them play, next year and the year after that and the year after that. In my head, that's what I'm. And then as I'm on the shuttle bus, I think to go over to the stadium, I see Jack Hughes scores his first goal, and I'm like, well, sometimes that's how it works. But for me, it worked out great. I got to see the Gophers pound the crap out of Rutgers. I didn't have to stay the whole game. It was like 41-0 going into the third quarter, or fourth quarter rather. So it was a great day for everybody. But so yeah, that's kind of how I'm a Gophers fan, and now covering women's hockey, I've become friends with a lot of people out in Minnesota and former players, former Gopher players, and some of them are some of my closest friends that I've made in that space. And I'm kind of always asking, hey, if you ever come across Gophers tickets, just let me know. Like, give me like a week advance or 2 weeks advance where I can kind of get out there and figure out a way to get out there. But I'd love to go see a football game out there one day. So we'll see.
You should go see the stadium one day, Dan. I've been there once. I didn't see a football game. I was at the game where the Blackhawks played the Wild.
Okay.
The Stadium Series game.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've been a big fan of Zach Parise my whole life, so I would root for him when he was with the Wild when they weren't playing the Devils, of course. But you know, it was just really cool atmosphere, and they love hockey, they love football up there. So, but yeah, Frank, why don't you lead us off with a good old question for Dan?
Dan, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming on again.
Thanks. Good to see both of you guys.
I got quite a few questions to ask you about the PWHL. I know you follow that and all that information regarding that, so I'm eager to pick your brain here on a few things. So there's a lot I don't know, and maybe you'll be able to fill me in. But they announced that the PWHL will have a 24-game regular season. It'll begin in January. With only 6 teams, kind of makes sense. You got a 24-game schedule, but in your mind, is this too small, or is this right about where you would predict a 24-game season, or you want to see a little bit more? What do you think?
I've always said I want them. You know, we had 24-game season PHF last season. I think the last 2 seasons, maybe it was 20 and then 24. But more games. I always want more games because that's more paychecks for the players, right? That's actually more than I anticipated they were going to do for this season that's starting in January, and I think they're going to run till May was what I had heard. But they say in year 2 they want to do 32 games, which will be maybe like their norm, and run from November to May, I think. So whatever they're doing this year, it's going to be really truncated. It all feels really rushed to me, and you know, nobody's going to tell me that it's not, and I'm going to believe them. Everything is really rushed right now. They don't have locations. They have locations, but not like rinks set in stone, agreements to play in certain rinks and stuff like that. The rosters are supposedly going to start getting built tomorrow with free agent signings, and then they have a draft, and they have kind of all these things. And but yeah, about 24 games is actually more than I thought they would do this season. But we'll see. You know, they have a lot to work out between now and January, and the clock is ticking. As on my buddy Jeff's podcast, TikTok MFer, like you know, it's you have a lot of things. Teams don't have staffs, right? You have to fill out staffs, game day operations, all those kind of things. So it's interesting.
32 games seemed like, in my head, the number that I was arriving to when I saw 24. I'm like, 24 just doesn't seem like enough. Like 32 would be the perfect number. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and they said it in the press conference too, that like from November to May they want to like add an extra. Would that be 9 extra games? And you got the holidays in there too, so that would be some time off.
You have the holidays, and a lot of the players that'll be playing in this league are compete internationally, right? They play in World Championships or 4 Nations Cups. So there's always going to be those breaks built into the schedule to allow those players the small number of players, because then you have the rest of the team is just sitting around, right, or practicing or whatever they do. And also, I'm sure they'll do in the past with the NWHL before it was the PHF, they would take the weekend off of the Women's Frozen Four just to not take any attention away. So all of the women's hockey world will be watching that, and then the following day or following weekend watching their playoffs. I'm interested, and I think they'll probably end up doing that, which you say November to May, only 40 games. Like there's a lot of gaps in there and a lot of bye weeks, I'm sure. But it'll also be for a lot of those things. It'll be the international tournaments and pauses and holiday breaks. They'll probably do 2 weeks for Christmas, a week for Thanksgiving. those kind of things. So
Right.
Yeah, that's smart. I like to hear that too because there's nothing more important for the women's game for them to contribute to helping the women's game in other areas. And I love to hearing the NHL get involved too with some of the comments that were made. I watched the entire press conference, so I understand we have Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, New York, Boston, and Minnesota. I think that's a great original six. Wrote for Puck Pros that we need a team in Chicago so I could buy merch and go to games, but they don't care just about me. They care about the health of the league as a whole, which is unfortunate for me. But I'm curious if you heard anything through the grapevine. They mentioned NHL rinks, they mentioned AHL rinks, they even mentioned OHL rinks. I'm wondering, will the Ottawa team play where the 67s play? They're probably not going to play where the Senators play because that building stinks and it's in the middle of nowhere. I would be shocking if they played there. Will the New York team play in New Jersey? Is the New Jersey Devils Hockey House, the RWJ Barnabas Health House, a possibility? I know that's where the Riveters played, but obviously they're not trying to completely copy that league. So I'm curious if you heard anything or if you have an opinion on that.
I think my opinion is they should be aiming for AHL and OHL sized rinks. I think you're really shooting for the moon if you want to play your games in NHL rinks. Having said that, again, tomorrow is September 1st, right? And they don't have these agreements yet set where they're actually playing these games. I think a couple of teams do, but nothing is that, at least that I've heard. And admittedly, I haven't really been asking around a lot. But anything I've heard the last couple of days is there's nothing set. I've heard Minnesota is going to play where the Wild play at XL Center, which is interesting because you're not going to fill. I don't think you're not going to fill that rink up for 12 home games. I could be wrong, and I'll eat my hat or something.
If there was a place to do it, it'd be Minnesota, but I agree. I still don't see it.
You have to aim smaller, I think, especially just starting up. And in Minnesota where they have, they had the Whitecaps who had a really 20-year rich history before playing in pro leagues. Everybody knows the Whitecaps in Minnesota, and you're going to put another team that's not named the Whitecaps. It'll be interesting. So that's one. And I've heard you mentioned the New York team. I've heard the first place I heard was Long Island, which makes sense. They would kind of partner with the Islanders, maybe play at their practice rink. I've never been there. I don't know if it has seating or what the deal is there. And the other place that I heard was Bridgeport, Connecticut, which is not in New York.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also where the AHL Bridgeport Islanders or Bridgeport Sound Tigers. No, they're the Islanders now. Islanders AHL team plays in Bridgeport. I've been there for Bridgeport games. I've been there for an NWHL game where the Boston Pride played the Connecticut Whale. And they did kind of like a doubleheader kind of game, and it was single admission for both games. Decent crowd, but that place holds maybe 2,500, maybe 3,500 max if it's packed. So that's kind of, I think, where they should be aiming to start. Like, I'm not saying don't aim to play in NHL size rinks one day, but just because you sold them out on a couple of like barnstorming tours, that doesn't mean you're going to sell them out in the middle of NHL playoff season, right? Like, that's the other thing. You're starting in January. How many outlets are really going to cover the league when NHL playoff races are heating up, right? It's January, Winter Classic, all that's going on, outdoor games. How much is ESPN and Sportsnet and all these people that show up to the introductory press conferences, how much of the time are they going to devote to help promote and grow the game? Because that's a big part of it too. And, we've done it at the Ice Garden, I'd say as best as we can with the limited budget that we have. And a lot of us have day jobs where we're not available to do an 11 a.m. press conference, or some of us couldn't be at games all the time and those kind of things. All that's going to factor into how successful this is. But I think with the rinks, you have to start small and kind of build your way up. The Montreal Force, which was the PHF team, was an expansion team last year, and they're no longer existing. But there's a team there in Montreal. I had heard that Montreal team was supposed to play in Laval rink, or one of the rinks where the Laval Rocket play. It's a building that has 3 rinks, and one was going to be dedicated for that team. So I'd be shocked if that same kind of deal doesn't work out. But ultimately what I've heard is a lot of the teams like Boston and New York and probably Toronto and Montreal and Ottawa, they're not going to be playing all 12 home games in one rink. So it'll be a little bit here, a little bit there. And that's probably a product of you don't have anything in place right now, and nobody's going to commit to you for 12 dates this late in the game. Youth teams, right? Everybody buys ice time on rinks and stuff like that, and stuff is scheduled. So it'll be interesting. But I don't think the New York team playing here in New Jersey, at least at the Devils practice rink, I don't think that's a possibility. But again, I could be wrong.
So I kind of want to expand on Vinny's mentioning of the original six. It's kind of a two-part question for you. So the original six that we know so far that we just talked about, I want to know how you feel about the market of those choosing those cities as the original six. And then where does the PWHL go from here? Have you heard anything about, I'm assuming that the six will turn into 12 eventually, but have you heard anything about the expansion of cities they may look to move to and expand to, like Chicago or Los Angeles or Florida somewhere? I mean, just give me some insight on that.
Okay. First part was my opinion on the locations.
Yeah, like your opinion on how you feel about these were the original six. Yeah.
I don't have a problem with any of them. My main issue is I know they want to copy the NHL, and for maybe the casual fan, like it's a cool thing. Look, they have their kind of own NHL original six, right? And I don't know. For myself, I'm like, you don't need to be like the NHL. You shouldn't have to be asking the NHL for help. Like, you should kind of want to do it on your own. Like those kind of things. That's the way that I think, though. That's just my opinion. I get the idea of why they would want to do it to kind of garner a little bit more interest. But my big issue is there 4 or 5 of those teams, if you consider New York being metropolitan, are in locations that there already were just teams. And they've said they're not bringing, it's not going to be the Riveters, it's not going to be the Pride or the Whitecaps or the Six or the Force. They want to do their own kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I wonder where does that leave fans that for the last 8 years, spent their money, dedicated their time to supporting a particular team, brand, people on the team, right? People running the team, all those kind of things. I wonder where that leaves the fan. And I think it's a mistake, to be honest, especially in, like I touched on with Minnesota with the Whitecaps. Like, that's a really big established brand. And I had a former Whitecap on my podcast that I do Around the Rink on Twitter weekly. And my co-host is a former Whitecap as well. And, it's sad to them that, like, that brand no longer really exists. It does. There's the junior Whitecaps, which is, like a little local junior team that travels and beats the tar out of teams around the region because, they're Minnesota kids. They're all really, really good. But to me, that's a mistake to not bring that. But this is what the people who are running the PWHL, this is what they wanted to do. They wanted to have their own thing. And it's a big gamble, kind of. I've said a couple of times, not only on my show, I was on a blues show a couple nights ago as well. It's a big gamble that all of a sudden people are going to just start paying attention because it's Hillary Knight or it's Amanda Kessel or it's Marie-Philippe Poulin and Sarah Nurse. And a big part of it is sexism. Like, you look at any post from a women's hockey thing, or if like Elliot Friedman posts something about women's hockey, like, look at the replies. Like, every second, third one is something sexist. So my thinking is, like, is all of a sudden people are not going to be, sexist towards this. Like, they're okay. Let's, roll up our sleeves and let's support this 100%. Like, that's where I wonder, like, how is this not going to be the same as what we just experienced the last 8 years? Like, are they just kind of doomed to keep repeating themselves? So the other part of your question was expansion. When this all kind of first happened, I had heard Toronto, Montreal, London, Ontario, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Washington, D.C. Those were the 6 teams that we thought initially were going to be. So obviously some of that changed, but I would think those are some of the markets. And months back, I had heard Chicago was an option for the PHF, that they were interested in having a team. The Blackhawks have a new practice facility. Am I right in
Yes,
thinking
and
of
it's awesome. It has multiple rinks on it too, which is nice. They wouldn't even have to touch the rink that the Blackhawks use if they didn't want to.
Right. So that would have been probably a strong option. And Kendall Coyne Schofield has ties to that area. So I'd be shocked if, I don't know if they would double in 1 year, maybe add 1 or 2 teams. They always say we have kind of investors always looking to purchase in and buy teams. I don't know how much of that I believe, because everybody always says that because you're trying to create a market, right? But I do think there will be at least 2, probably 2, 3 in the first year. And I would think a team somewhere in the Midwest to give Minnesota a break on travel. That was always our biggest complaint in the PHF was, and with my Minnesota co-host, like their trips they sucked. Like every trip was a plane trip. And Buffalo's taking a bus to Boston, and Boston's taking a bus to Connecticut and New Jersey. And Minnesota's got to fly on a plane to this place and that place. So they would do sometimes a little bit longer trips just to get them out of the way, and then have like a home heavy schedule at the end. But they have to put a team in Chicago or Milwaukee, right, where the Admirals play. I think would be a great spot. And Wisconsin is a big hockey state too. Somewhere around there, even put another team in Minnesota and put one in St. Paul or up north by Bemidji, right? Like, they have enough talent, I think, to fill those rosters locally and players that would want to play there.
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of love over there in Wisconsin for hockey. I'll tell you that much for free. And they don't have an NHL team, so it would be awesome to see them get a team. But Dan, you touched on Marie-Philippe Poulin and Hillary Knight and all the great women players that exist today. I know sometimes those are the recognizable names, of course. When you think of the NHL, you got Ovechkin and Crosby. Like, those aren't the best players in the league anymore, though. That's pretty much shifted to McDavid and Draisaitl, Matthews, Makar, and McKinnon. I would say those are the 5 best players. Who are the 5 best players that are going to be entering the PWHL next season? Who is the equivalent of them? Is Marie-Philippe Poulin still the best player on planet Earth? Is Hillary Knight still the best American goal scorer? Amanda Kessel, I know, was in the mix for a long time. Love Megan Duggan, Kendall Coyne, obviously. Some of these players, I don't know if they're even playing as much anymore. But, I mean, what's your take on that question?
I would say Poulin and Knight would be 1 and 2. Pick your order, whichever way you want.
Wow. Okay.
Depending on what day it is, they can be interchangeable. As other than that, like, I don't pay attention to a lot of international hockey, unfortunately. I know Sarah Nurse is really, really good, and so again, I'm not too familiar with a large majority of the players who are going to be in this league now because they weren't in the league that I covered on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So those 3 definitely, I would say. And then I'll throw 2 PHF players. Taylor Gerard played for the Connecticut Whale the past 2 seasons, from your neck of the woods over in Michigan. Really, really talented player, really tall and lanky. In a lot of ways, kind of like somebody that you would be familiar with, Dawson Mercer, kind of that kind of style of game, really fearless. And she's great at turning defense into offense, especially on a penalty kill. She had like 3-4 shorthanded goals last season. And
wow.
Like, I think, and I tell her this a lot, like, she's really just scratching the surface because she's so big and it's kind of rare to see like a really tall women's hockey player. Like, a lot of them are kind of around the same size, but the bigger ones kind of stick out. Sometimes they're not as fleet of foot either when you're bigger, right? It's a smaller person's game and quickness and all that. But Taylor is so good at like shielding, holding off the defender as she's going in on a shorthanded breakaway. Just one arm off the stick, and she's doing one hand on the stick handling and poking it under the goalie. So when she plays like that, like she's almost unstoppable. Another player I guess I would throw out is, Lauren Gable was another one. She played in Boston this past season. Played at Clarkson in college. Played a little bit with the PWHPA when that was when they were doing their barnstorming tours. But she came into the league last season, and I think she did 40 points in 22 games or something like that, or 20 games. Like, she was like must-see TV, like worth the price of admission. Because every time she got the puck, it was just like she was like, I'm about to clown like everybody right now in front of me. And that was one of the reasons when I went to go see them in the playoffs and they got eliminated by Minnesota. It was a little surprising because I didn't see any of that from her, and I wondered if she was tired or if it was just kind of like, sometimes the tide is just against you and things don't work out. It's puck luck, the puck bouncing or whatever. But she's so dynamic and passer, shooter. She's equally good at both, and she really makes the players around her better. Like whatever they changed, Paul Mara was the coach last season, and he would change their lines constantly. And whoever was on that line was like getting 6 points on the weekend in 2 games, and it was crazy. It was she's really fun to see. So those would be 2, and there's so many others that I hope they really get a shot in this league. But we'll find out, I guess, in the next couple of weeks as the rosters start to fill out. They said they want camps to start in November, so about a month and a half, we'll probably know who's going where, and hopefully the players that don't get selected, they can find somewhere to play overseas. But those leagues have started already, really, for the most part. So they're really hoping for somebody gets homesick or doesn't like their ice time and just wants to leave or wants to change teams. That's pretty much what a lot of players will be going through, because we're going from potentially 11 teams to only 6 this year in North America, and that's the tough part of all this for me and a lot of the people that I know.
So let me get this, see if I have this correctly. All the players, the women athletes that we know and love, they're going to be plucked out of their whatever they're doing right now, and they're going to be put into the PWHL. So Hillary Knight and all those players are all going to be draft eligible. So like those are the players we could expect to see and everything, and be drafted, and however that'll work. That's how it's going to work.
And to follow that up, what's the difference between the draft and free agency in this? Like in the NHL draft is, the entry draft, and then free agency is all people on expiring contract when it's starting from scratch too, to follow up Frankie's question.
I think it's going to be a little bit of like the way that it worked when the NWHL did have a draft. It was like you weren't for the really good teams, the smart teams that had smart people. They weren't just drafting any kids from college, right? They were, hey, we play in Buffalo. Would you like to play in Buffalo? Yes or no? If you say no, then we're not going to pursue this because we want you to play where you're comfortable playing. So sometimes that worked in Boston's favor because everybody wanted to play in Boston, and it's a great city. And
they were good right off the bat too, weren't they? The Pride, and they win the first 2 Bella Cups.
They had all the best players. So, and then even after the Hillary Knights and Brianna Deckers left the league, like they were still always really good and attracted the best players because that's a hockey hotbed, and so is Minnesota as well. So I'm not really, to be honest, to be frank, the draft and the free agency, I'm not really sure what the difference in all of it is. I know that there are players who are submitting preferred destinations, but I can tell you that like the top players like Hillary Knight and Marie-Philippe Poulin, like they're not going to go play in a place that they don't want to play. Like if Hillary Knight wants to play in Boston, that's probably where she's going to end up playing. If Marie-Philippe Poulin wants to play in Montreal, she's probably going to be on that team.
I would almost bank on it then at this point. And they're going to create the Montreal-Boston rivalry in that league too.
Within reason, though, right? Like if they both wanted to go to the same team, they're not both going to go to the same team.
Right. Well,
right.
A lot of it will be, and I think the way that they're breaking it down is like teams can have like 6 max salaries, right? So you have to be careful of how you load up on certain players. The goaltending is the most interesting to me always. But all of that is kind of based on it's going to be who's running the teams, what kind of players do they have relationships with already that they trust, that they know that they're a fan of their styles one way or the other. So we'll see. That I think, like I said, free agency I think starts tomorrow. They haven't even announced the GMs. I believe that announcement is coming as well tomorrow. I've heard a couple of names, but nothing concrete. So we'll see what happens starting tomorrow.
Yeah, during the press conference, they kept saying Friday for basically everything that got brought up, and they danced around some questions, but I think they were pretty thorough for the most part on, answering the questions that were asked, even the hard ones. But Dan, I know USA and Canada dominate the women's game, I would say, for the most part. They're kind of like, the USA doesn't, I wouldn't say they dominate in men's in any way. I think Canada dominates in men's, and then everybody else is just trying to catch them, and it's a different team in second place every year. But the US and Canada go back and forth and have been for a long time now. What's the third country? Is it Finland? Because it seems like it's Finland, but Sweden's always available. I'm sure Russia produces good women players as well. Obviously, the Czech Republic and Switzerland and all these countries produce good talent on the men's side. I'm curious, who would you rank third?
Probably Finland, just because they have so much depth, whether it's at scoring positions or goaltending. Like they have a really deep pool of players. But it's kind of like one year a couple of years it'll be Finland, and then Sweden jumps up and they upset a couple of teams and they have a good run. Or it's you mentioned the Czech Republic. Switzerland is another team that's caused a little headaches for some teams. That's another player. Alina Mueller plays for Team Switzerland. Was supposed to play in the PHF this upcoming season. She is dynamite player, must-see TV. And so she signed with a team over in, I think it's in Switzerland. But she has kind of like an exit clause where if a team does draft her or want to sign her, she can get out of her contract. But because this league isn't going to start until January, like why would she, leave in September, right? To come sit over here and sit here and twiddle her thumbs and just skate around in circles. At least she's playing in games. She's kind of keeping in shape and be ready to go when they start training camps in November.
Frank, whoever she ends up with, you have to root for.
I know.
With the last name Mueller. Frank's last name is Mueller, Dan, so he has to choose.
Her brother played for the Devils, Mirko Mueller.
I remember, and then that's right. I do remember that,
There's
Dan.
Peter Mueller too, right?
Peter Mueller played way back in the day. He played.
No,
for the
there's
Panthers.
somebody on the Panthers who played.
Yeah, that was Peter Mueller.
Really?
Peter Mueller was a Gopher.
Yeah,
but he's not related to them. They're Mirko and Alina are from Switzerland.
Yeah, I remember because the Devils traded for Mirko Mueller. They protected him in the Vegas expansion draft. That goes to show how far no offense to the Mueller family, but that goes to show how far the Devils have come. They, a player like Mueller was being protected back then. But I remember one time someone tweeted Mirko and said, "Hey, Mirko, your sister's better than you at hockey." And he quote tweeted it and said, no shit. Because she actually, like, comparative to league, she actually is, like, world's better than him.
She's one of the top players. She was just she just finished college at Northeastern and was just dominant. Like,
oh, hell yeah.
I'm disappointed that, hopefully this upcoming season I get to see her play at least once. But I knew if she was in the PHF, I was going to see her, really up close and personal here in New Jersey, and if I go to Connecticut.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Frank, that's your team wherever she ends up.
Hey,
that's the team you're cheering for
I'd
until
get
the
a
team
jersey.
comes to Chicago. I think I'm going to get one for the New York team, especially if there's a little bit of love from, that whole area. I think will be all in on them. So I think I'll be all in on them as well. But Frank, what do you got for Dan? You got anything else?
Yeah, it's great to see the women's hockey is on the upward trajectory. The NHL released a statement that they're excited to work alongside the PWHL to grow the sport as a whole. So what does this mean for the NHL? Do you think there's going to be collaborative events going forward? Will they'll work with each other? And I don't know. I mean, we've seen them come to the All-Star game. Is that going to be like, are we going to see more events like that of the two leagues working together? I'm assuming so, but I want your take on that.
I would think so, and I think you'll see you'll see maybe more in arena promotion. Like, hey, like check out the Boston team next door or wherever they're playing 2 nights from tonight. And that was a thing where like sometimes when the Riveters played next door to the Devils, like it was almost like they had to like really, really, really ask them to help promote them. And like all they had to do was throw up a graphic, every hour or so and just create awareness. Like that was always the biggest challenge was, oh, I didn't even know that the Riveters existed. I didn't know there was a women's hockey league. Like there was so many people I met where I had those kind of conversations and, and to the Riveters, fault when they played there. So they played there a couple of seasons and they had a partnership with the Devils. They even changed their colors from red, white, and blue to red, white, and black. And then they kind of, after it was supposed to be a 3-year deal, and then it ended after 2. The Riveters move out of there, and then they end up playing, I think, 1 or 2 more seasons. They come back, and they had times. There was a couple of games where I covered the Devils game at like 2:00, and then at 6:00 I covered the Riveters game, or vice versa. But the Devils leading into the Riveters game, if I worked for the Riveters and I told them that, I would have been like, as the Devils game is ended, I'm out there with big arrows pointing. You come walk right around here. We'll let you in for free. Like just because you want to create like, oh, I didn't know this existed, right? There's people coming out with their kids, little daughters, boys, whatever. It doesn't matter. Get as many people as you can in there. And there was nobody from the Riveters outside trying to, let people in. There was no, hey, if you show us a ticket stub from the Devils game, we'll give you half off your ticket price or something like that. Like there were so many easy opportunities that for me, like have the Riveters and they did it a couple of times, but I felt like it could have been done way more. Mm-hmm. A couple of times they had them in the concourse signing autographs, and that's, little girls walk by. Oh, what's that? Why is that girl wearing a jersey that has another girl flexing on it? Like, I don't know. Like everybody kind of knows that Rosie logo, and it kind of creates conversation and they did it a couple of times, and I thought it was a big hit, but it was like, do more of that. Like, I don't know. I kind of lost my train of thought where I was going with this.
It just kind of seems like a lost business opportunity. Like they could have did that, and then, hey, folks, go get loaded at Taj Lounge 973 or then last season American Whiskey, and then come right back at 6 and watch the Riveters play.
The Riveters did do a little bit of that, where it was like, hey, if we score 3 goals or if we win, you take your ticket stub over to Reds and you'll get 15% off your food order or drink order or whatever. Like
a lot of teams do that.
Yeah,
and like Reds is like a happening spot, and like even after Riveters games, like we would go there a couple of times, and it was kind of nice. Like the players would come in and do like their post game meals in there, and Reds would cater to them and that kind of stuff. And they have the championship jersey there. We partied after the Isabel Cup over at Reds. Bruce Driver, who I recently interviewed for Pucks and Pitchforks, he drank out of the cup that night. He was there at the party, and
it's awesome.
You mentioned Megan Duggan before. She was there. She had actually retired from playing, but she was there because she was really good friends with Erica Lawler, who played at nearby Wisconsin. Well, they played together at Wisconsin, but they're like best of friends. So Duggan was there in support, but she won't be playing in this new league. She works for the Devils, and that's her job. But she supports all those girls and Olympic players, and she was just a phenomenal player. I had the honor and privilege of covering her for 2 seasons in our league, and don't know her all that well. I know she doesn't know at least who I am, kind of face and name. I know she kind of follows me on social media and all that, and every time I see her in the press room at dinner, I'm oh my God, that's Megan Duggan. Like that's Captain America. Like
she's kind of like a legend at this point.
She's a badass, and like I never want to be, I would just start stuttering and stammering talking to her. So I just kind of like wave and nod and just keep eating my food or walking or whatever.
Yeah, she's brought a lot of happiness to us women's hockey fans for sure. Frank, you can double up one last question for Dan, because you know exactly how I'm going to end it with him before we let him go.
Sure. Do you happen to know if there's going to be any major rule changes in this league? compared to like the women's hockey game.
No, I don't think so. I think they'll probably keep the international rules that they kind of have always, or these leagues have always kind of adopted those rules, or sometimes it's a hybrid between that and NCAA rules. But it's nothing crazy, nothing major. They do the shootout where it's 3 shooters and then you can start picking the same player over and over again. That's maybe one of the only big things. They do 3-on-3 overtime. Which sometimes can be an adventure, especially if you get like a real true breakaway. It just kind of feels like, especially with the women's game, it feels like it creates this like tennis match almost. So they go back and forth of like 2-on-1, 3-on-2, 2-on-1, 3-on-2, and players are tired and they're trying to change, and it's chaos, and we love it. We would love more of it, but yeah, that's pretty much it. And then they did the same thing in the playoffs where it was, they would play a 10-minute overtime of 3-on-3, and if nobody scored, then they go to a shootout. But thankfully, we never got to that point. So they ended the final in overtime, and I think it was 6 or 4 minutes into it. So,
guys, I'm trying to figure out. This isn't my final question. I just wanted to bring it up really quick because you made me think of it. I can't remember what league it is, but there's some penalty changes being approved throughout different leagues, and I eventually think at least one of these will come to the NHL. But one of them was, okay, if you score a shorthanded goal, you killed the penalty, it's over. I love that. I love that one. These two I'm a little more bullish on. The other one was, if you score on a delayed penalty, you still get the power play. And the other one was, if you score on a power play, the penalty doesn't expire. You get to keep doing it as kind of like a 5-minute major rule.
I like the second one.
Out of the final two would take some serious getting used to. But the first one, if you score a shorthanded goal, why shouldn't you be able to get rid of that? I think that would encourage teams to maybe not be so quick to dump it as soon as they get possession from the defensive zone on the power play or on the penalty kill. Excuse me. I don't know. Really quick, guys.
I like that second one.
I do too, a lot.
I think that's something that they did in the PHF last season. Can you read it again?
So it was the second one?
Yeah.
The second one is, if you take a delayed penalty, or if you earn a delayed penalty and you score, you still get the 2-minute power play.
Yeah.
Now you don't. If you score with the goalie pulled, you don't get the power play anymore.
Right, yes. So that was a rule last year, and I think it came up once. And if I'm not mistaken, it was either Paul Mara or it was the Riveters coach was like screaming at the top of his lungs. Like sometimes in these rinks, there wasn't a lot of people, and there were smaller rinks. The sounds kind of echo a little bit. This coach was screaming at, "Are you effing kidding me? Like, this is bullshit," and blah 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 blah. And it ended up it was the right rules. Like the referee called it the right way. Like nobody really knew it except for the referees. That's kind of the thing. Like a lot of the players and sometimes the coaches, like they were very up on the rules, but that was one that I guess kind of slipped past everybody.
Yeah, I like the that second one. I've always thought, like, why don't you get the power play? It's stupid.
Yeah,
give them the damn power play. You earned it. It sucks that you let up the goal on the delayed penalty, but I earned the penalty. So I before I like really got into hockey, and I would like play the NHL video games like 12, 13 years ago, whatever, and I kind of learned it that way. I always thought that's how it worked. And then I was like pissed off that that wasn't the case. I go, what the hell? I earned the penalty, and now it's gone. Like I don't know. I think that one is the most, in my opinion, the most. I don't even know the word. Not reliable, but the one that come to the NHL the quickest the three.
You guys don't like an automatic kill for scoring a shorthanded goal?
That's okay. I mean, I don't.
It's not bad,
but like, I don't need it either. Like,
yeah, it's like, to me, it's like little arcadey now, right?
I get what you're saying. Listen, I like action, and I do think it would Connor McDavid is the best penalty killer in the NHL. Nobody wants to admit it. The advanced statistics might not support that. I'm sure they don't, but he's a threat to score every single time. That's why they put him out there. He's good enough defensively where they could put him out there, and he'll score some. Him and Draisaitl will create some chances shorthand if they get a 2-on-1 the other way. Jack Hughes won't see a minute of penalty kill ice time this season. But Nico, he sure will. It takes those two-way guys, but I don't know. And Dan, that's exactly where I'm going to leave you off to end your little segment here with us. We can't thank you enough for coming on. I really love talking hockey with you. I hope we get to do it more often in the future. Devils. They're coming up on this season, a lot of expectations. They had just traded for Toffoli last time we talked to you, but they hadn't gone through the draft yet. The Connor Hellebuck haven't. The Connor Hellebuck conversation hadn't really started yet. Where are you at on that and the team, and what your expectations are with training camp just under a month away?
I'm sky is the limit for the group. If they don't duplicate last season, that's okay. All they have to do is get into the playoffs. Doesn't matter if they finish first in the division, first in the conference, last wild card in. And as far as goaltending is, I think it's the quote unquote weak spot of the team. That's not really that weak. We saw this past year, the league is different now, where it's not like I had this conversation the other night, there's Vasilevsky, and then there's kind of everybody else in my mind as far as the goaltenders go in the NHL. You have a really, really good chance to win if you have a Vasilevsky. But Aiden Hill won the cup last year, right?
Kemper the year before.
Right? These are guys that have bounced around, so it's gone are the days where it was, the games that I grew up watching and going to as a fan where it was 2-1, 3-2. A lot of games now are going to be 6-4, and sometimes you were losing 4-1, and you won 6-4, right? You just have to make the saves to kind of keep the team in the game. Don't let them get the doors blown off them. And this team is going to score. I wrote for the Pucks and Pitchforks. They have the best top 9 in the NHL on paper, right?
I think so.
Going into the season, I would compare them to. I would have them go toe to toe with any other top 9 out.
Me too. They have the second best 1-2 punch down the middle.
Edmonton could say well, we don't need top 9. We just have a top 6, and our top 6 might be better than your top 9. I get all that. We could get it to but
yeah,
they have a legit top 9 that they're going to score goals, and they're going to be mostly together for a while. Barring anything crazy, unforeseen, right? Injuries always throws wrenches into plans and those kind of things. But I'm heading into the season with expectations they're going to get into the playoffs again. They shown last year they know what it takes to win on a nightly basis. They had that huge start, right? And they were top 5 in the league in points at the end of November, right? By Thanksgiving. And they really never dropped out of that. Even they had a 7-game losing streak or pointless.
My fault. Went to a Devils game for the first time ever. They lost, and then they lost 6 straight after that. Then they bounced back once I got my ass out of New Jersey.
They still never fell out of the top 5 in points in the NHL or the top 10. I might be exaggerating a little bit, but I know it was something in that realm, and that's the sign of a really good team and a team that didn't take anything for granted. They got a taste of what the playoffs is like. Something I talked with Bruce Driver about for Pucks and Pitchforks was, do you see similarities? Kind of your group had to kind of learn how to win by losing and going through those hard times, and then they got to the playoffs, and they went to the conference finals, and they thought we're going to do this every year. It's not that easy. It took them another 5 or 6 years to really become and it was. They bring in Jacques Lemaire, and you bring in a couple other pieces. I think this team is a little bit ahead of that group where they have enough established guys that are going to be helping these young and developing players. What does Dawson Mercer look like in year 3? What does Nico and Jack look like a year older? Brat, another year older, another year wiser. He can be a really big part. And Timo Meyer, a full training camp with this group. And you can kind of go on and on. It's exciting. And we mentioned all them guys. We didn't even talk about Luke Hughes. We got a taste, a small taste of what he possibly could be
And it was delicious.
It was, for Devils fans, it was really, really good. And it's like that's coming too. Like, again, for him, a full training camp of knowing the system. You think he was playing system when he was out there? Like, he's kind of just go do your thing, kid. Like, don't, play responsible, just play hockey. Like, let your instincts take over. But now he's going to learn the system. He's going to learn the tendencies of his partners. And I'm sure those guys are going to be like, go ahead, kid. You take it. Like, I'm Johnny Marino. I'll sit back here and you go. And I got the backside. Anytime you want to go, you go. I got you covered. Like, we'll have that kind of in sync kind of mentality. And it's exciting. It's exciting for fans, I'm sure. It's exciting for me to get to cover a team that's successful finally after, I started my career with like covering them at kind of like the pinnacle, and then they kind of just were an average playoff team, and then went through this 7-8 year stretch of just crap and
2 rebuilds essentially.
People calling you names online and this, that, the other, and everybody's fighting with each other. It was so refreshing last season to, I don't mind people calling me names. That's fine. Like, as long as it's not personal, I understand as a sports fan the need to kind of vent, and sometimes I'm that outlet because I'm on that platform, and that's fine. Like, I do that with the Giants. Like, I do that with Go for Football tonight. Like, I'm going to be angry a little bit if things aren't going our way, but I think it's going to be a great season. I think they'll be all right. The goaltending just has to be, league average, and they'll be fine. Just don't get it. They don't need to do 7 goaltenders again, hopefully. And hopefully everybody stays healthy. That's always the big equalizer. And there's always 1 or 2 teams that surprise from year to year. And you hope, this isn't one of those years where you kind of, 17 teams from the Metro make the playoffs and the Devils are the one left out or something. Like, that's always the gauntlet too, is getting out of the division. But like I said, just make the playoffs. Doesn't matter where you finish. We saw that last year, Florida Panthers, right? I mean, we saw that, unfortunately, as Devils supporters and fans in 2012 with the LA Kings. You just have to get into the playoffs. At this point, it doesn't matter. And then it depends on, if you get a great matchup, somebody on the other team is banged up, maybe you get to the next round, and then, so on and so on. But exciting times ahead, hopefully.
You know what? The Devils, they don't get enough credit for being similar to the Kings in 2012, though. I'll say that much. It was a stunner that they beat the Rangers, and how could they beat the Flyers? The Flyers were so much better than them in the regular season. It was a 3-horse race on New Year's Day, and then the Devils fell way back and ended up as the 6th seed. And like all of a sudden they're in the Stanley Cup final because they got hot at the right time. So, the Devils were kind of like that team. It was a stunner that the Bruins lost to the Capitals, and then the Devils ended up running the table from there. Like, I remember in that playoff season. So, Dan, you are a wonderful treat to have on this show. We can't thank you enough for coming on.
Thank you, Dan.
PWHL. We will have you back on again, probably right before the season starts, is my hope. Maybe a little, or maybe we'll do it twice before the season starts. Love to have you around training camps and whatnot too, to, talk some stuff as we know a little bit more about the teams, and it's great stuff. Before you leave, promote yourself.
You can find me in the Twitterverse at DRice Hockey, DRICE Hockey, or Dr. Ice Hockey, or DR Ice Hockey, however you want to look at it. As I mentioned, I do, and you kind of said as well, I do Around the Rink, which is a live show on Twitter. Once a week. We don't have a set date. It's not Mondays, every Monday or anything like that. And so we do it live on Twitter, and then the next day-ish, it's available on every podcast platform. If you just want to check some of them out, just go search for The Ice Garden. You can go to theicegarden.com and support our writers. We take subscriptions. We're an independent site now. We're totally funded by our community. And it's pretty neat that we've gotten to expand our reach and do kind of things like podcasts, and having them be available for more than just Twitter audience is great to reach a broader audience as well. We like doing the live show, though, where we can have listeners and fans kind of ask questions. We have just about every week we've had a guest, whether it's a women's hockey player or a reporter or a coach. we've had some really fun conversations, some tough conversations with obviously the PHF ending and a lot of players kind of being left in the dark and not knowing what's next for them. But I can't thank them enough for coming on my show and giving me usually we try and keep it to about an hour show. You can also find my work over at pucksandpitchforks.com. We referenced the Bruce Driver story that I posted. That was the most recent or the last article that I wrote. Excuse me. Saw Bruce at a Jersey Expo here in New Jersey. Got to speak with him for about 5 minutes or so. Also referenced the top 9 in the top 9 in the NHL, the Devils. That's my opinion. You can argue with me on that. And I also did a milestones article over at Pucks and Pitchforks. A lot of cool milestones coming up for the Devils and their players. Personally, the one that caught my attention was Nico Hischier and Jesper Bratt. I think if they get under 15 points or within, all they have to do is get about 15 points rather this season. And they'll both crack the top 20 of the franchise's all-time points list. That was one that kind of caught me a little off guard. I didn't realize either they were that high or the Devils' all-time totals were that low. Or are we just in a big boom of, this is the new NHL. It's more high scoring. There's going to be more points being racked up constantly. And I'd be surprised if Jack Hughes doesn't also join them on that list in the top 20. So Sergei Brelin and I think it was Brian Ralston, your days are numbered as being top 20 point getters in Devils Rockies franchise history. So
Yeah, love it, Dan. You do amazing work. Make sure you go follow Dan at dricehockey.com, or as I like to say, Dr. Ice Hockey, or not .com, at dricehockey. It's not his website. And hey, the Ice Garden. Make sure you're reading his stuff and following along there. The Ice Garden was well represented at the press conference on, was it Wednesday? I forget what day it was. 3 people?
I think
Three people were in on the call. There were 2 girls and a guy, I think, right? And just awesome stuff. Make sure you read all the stuff there. Go follow them. Dan, we can't thank you enough. And everybody, we would like to send you to period number 3. Welcome to period 3, Frank. I love Dan Rice.
So do I. It's a good guy.
I think it's my favorite kind of rice.
Am I your favorite kind of bean?
Oh, 100%. You're the only bean I like.
That's true. You don't like beans.
I don't like beans. Frank, what did you learn from the interview with Dan, besides the fact that the Devils are sick?
A lot. I learned a lot about the PWHL. It was very interesting. I think it's cool. I don't know. I think it's cool. I'll be tuning in. I love every sport. So
Frankie's ready to bet on it. Let's go.
Probably won't be. I don't know if you'll be able to.
Why not?
I don't know.
It might depend on what network they're on.
I know you can't just do like normal women's bet on normal women's like hockey that goes on right now if there's stuff going on right now.
Yeah, can you bet on the WNBA though?
You can.
I hope that the PWHL gets its feet wet in that market.
You probably will actually.
Do you want to talk some football?
I mean, why not? Right? It's football season.
Don't sound too damn excited. Damn.
Well,
you're not excited because you're about to get buried with knowledge. Frank, we're going to go through kind of like how we did with our positions in the NHL, and we're going to name who we think are the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. We're going to do it with the other positions. I don't know if we're going to full-blown go through the top 10s, but we're going to name what we think are the best ones. But for the quarterbacks, I definitely want to run through, like we're doing it with the other positions in hockey, the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. I'll let you go first.
So how do you want me to do this?
Let's do it just like we did the last one. We'll just go down the list.
So start at 1?
Yep, start at 1.
It gets to a point on this list where it's like I don't really have an answer for why they're there. But yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Number one, I got Patrick Mahomes.
You don't know why Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in
I
the
said
NFL?
it gets to a point.
Is it because he wins tons of Super
No,
Bowls or
it gets
throws
to
footballs from this angle and
I
they hit the
didn't say
receiver right in the chest?
I didn't say the top 5. I said it just gets to a point
I
on
know
this
what you
list.
said. I'm just giving you
Listen,
shit.
Patrick Mahomes, most well-rounded quarterback in the NFL. The way he moves, the way he throws the ball on the run, the way his offensive mindset is, it's unbelievable. It really is. And Patrick Mahomes, number one quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, we agree on that. Patrick Mahomes is without a question the number one quarterback in the NFL. Like I said, he wins Super Bowls, he wins MVPs. His arm could be parallel with the sky, and he'll still hit his receiver right in the chest. He's probably the most spectacular quarterback I've ever seen. Now, we define the GOAT here in the United States of America by, and not every country does this. Not every country watches sports the same way we do. Let me tell you something. Someone in Europe thinks the Bruins were the best team in the NHL this season. They think they were the most accomplished. The Premier League regular season trophy is significantly more important to them than the playoff trophy. For some reason, in the United States, we look at the playoffs, and that's where we decide our champion. But, Tom Brady's the GOAT in the U.S. because of winning. We like playoffs. We're a playoff-orientated country. Tom Brady's won the playoff tournament 7 times in his career, so he's considered the GOAT until otherwise. Patrick Mahomes, based on skill, ability, watch factor, entertainment, he is the most spectacular quarterback who ever lived. He is number one in the NFL until further notice. And I think 2 through 10 are way behind him. I don't see 2 coming up to get him anytime soon.
Your 2 is different than my 2, but yeah.
My 2 is different than your 2 because my 2 is number 9, Joseph Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals. He is the second best quarterback in the NFL. He has been in the AFC title game each of the last 2 seasons. He's good in the regular season. He's good in the playoffs. And let me tell you what, the guy who's number 3 on your list, that team would have won the Super Bowl by now if Joe Burrow was their quarterback, because the Bengals, for basically all of Burrow's entire career, have had the worst offensive line of all the playoff teams in the NFL. The first year was so bad he ended up getting hurt and missed the rest of the year, so that was like a wasted season for him. But the second year it was even bad, but he was a little bit better at learning how to take hits or avoiding taking hits, throwing the ball away, whatever. Joe Burrow, he's won at every level. He dominated at LSU. It is the single greatest college season of all time. He's the number 1 pick in the NFL, and he just comes there and first full year with no injury, Super Bowl appearance. They lost to the Rams. Second full year, makes it to the AFC Championship game, barely loses to the eventual Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. Joseph Burrow is the second best quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah. My number 2 is not Joe Burrow. It is Josh Allen. Just because I think Josh Allen is the most physically gifted quarterback in the NFL, of any quarterback in the NFL. When he is built like a machine, that when he takes off, he's so hard to take down. And I think he has just as good as an arm and mindset as Joe Burrow. I think he has everything that Joe Burrow has, plus he's built like a machine. So that's why I gave him the edge. I think that the Cincinnati Bengals may be built a little bit better than the Buffalo Bills, and maybe that's why you've seen it, Joe Burrow, do so well. I think if you pluck Josh Allen onto the Cincinnati Bengals and he had as much time as Burrow has to get to know these players and whatnot, I think they would be just as successful and probably have done the same thing as he did and maybe even win. You don't know. But I think Josh Allen, number 2, takes the cake for me.
Your 3.
My 3 is Joe Burrow for the exact same reasons you stated. I think they're so close. I think Josh Allen and Joe Burrow are really, really so close. And then you got like Patrick Mahomes, like on a different planet. But Joe Burrow's just fantastic. I mean, I can't really say anything different than what you did because, I mean, you nailed it on the head with everything. But the way I come up with my list is if I'm choosing a team, these are the orders I would want my quarterbacks to go when I'm drafting my team. So that's all I get to say.
Understood. I put Josh Allen 3rd. He was 2nd going into last year. I bumped him down to 3rd because I realized. So I do think the Bills have a better overall roster than delete every quarterback in the NFL. I would probably put the Bills 2nd. The only team I would put roster minus quarterback ahead of the Bills is the San Francisco 49ers. And I don't think either of us are going to put a 49ers quarterback on this list, which is sad. But I think the Buffalo Bills have the second best roster. Josh Allen's decision-making last year started to worry me. And he threw a lot of interceptions from week 10 on. And that sunk the Bills a little bit. It hurt them in the playoffs. They almost lost to the Dolphins in the first round of the playoffs. Not as clutch and playoff successful as Burrow. It dropped him down one spot for me. I still think Josh Allen's elite. I still think Josh Allen has big hands. I still think Josh Allen, all the things we used to say at draftjoshallen.com. I was a big fan of him in college. He's a stud. There's no doubt about it. He just has lowered himself a little bit, and Burrow has ascended himself a little bit over the last season. I saw more from Burrow last year. This is going to be a big year for the Buffalo Bills. It's kind of put up or shut up for them this year, because the guy I have number 4th and 5th could easily jump Allen if Allen has a similar year this year to the year he had last year. And make no mistake about it, I think Josh Allen is amazing. And I wish he would have taken a little bit more of a step by now. He hasn't. Burrow has. That's why I put him down to 3rd.
Cool.
4th, I put Jalen Hurts. I never, ever, ever thought Jalen Hurts would reach my top 10 quarterback in the NFL list when he was at Alabama, and then he lost the job in the championship game, the college football national championship. He got benched at halftime when they were getting smoked by Georgia, and Tua Tagovailoa came out of the locker room and played the second half for Alabama and led them to a win. They came all the way back with Tua under center, and they ended up winning the national championship. Well, guess what? Jalen Hurts hits the transfer portal. He goes to Oklahoma, and lots of offensive statistic success there. But every quarterback that goes to Oklahoma has lots of statistical success. You think of Baker Mayfield, guys like that. They're always great in college. They put up lots of yards and touchdowns and stuff. And then when they get to the NFL, it doesn't usually translate it much. It has for the Philadelphia Eagles and Jalen Hurts. I would probably put the Eagles 3rd on that list. So he definitely benefits from that. Rosters minus quarterback. I probably would go San Francisco, Buffalo, Philly, and Jalen Hurts. Not everybody's able to take advantage of it. Last year, the combination of quarterbacks that they used in San Francisco wasn't able to overcome it in the championship game against Hurts. Hurts is number 4 on my list.
My number 4 is also Jalen Hurts. This kid's special. He had a great year. He didn't feed on the bottom feeders in the NFL. He went 9-1 against teams above 500.
Outstanding.
It is outstanding.
Good stat, Frank.
He led his team to the Super Bowl. And, he really excels with his feet, too. He's got great movement on his feet. He's just all around, he's the full package. If you need to run, you need to pass. I mean, he proved himself last year more than, the year prior. It's unbelievable. Jalen Hurts, superstar, incredible. Number 5 is Justin Herbert. Now, Herbert might not have the stats in terms of wins to prove that he's great, but to me, that doesn't really matter. This is another kid with a tremendous arm, and it seems like every time you watch a Chargers game, this dude's just heaving it up, and we're playing like 35, 28 games, and it's just because Justin Herbert can dissect the opposing defense so well. And I love the way he plays. It always seems like you're never out of it, and I get that feeling when I'm watching Patrick Mahomes play. It's like you're never out of it. And by no means is Justin Herbert Patrick Mahomes, but they kind of got that same feel to them when they're on the field. I mean, he's only getting better too. He's so young. His future's bright. I got Justin Herbert at number 5.
I put 5 Trevor Lawrence because Trevor Lawrence beat Justin Herbert in the playoffs. That was my tiebreaker there. Because I do think they're around similar trajectory, or not around. I think Lawrence has a better trajectory in terms of his future. Herbert gets a lot of credit for looking awesome as a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
His stats are good. They're really good. Make no mistake about it. But they're not, Burrow or Allen. Nobody's Mahomes, but Herbert would love to be in the Burrow-Allen conversation. He's not close. I think Hurts and Lawrence are. In terms of their stats and what we think of them for the future. I think Herbert could get there. The Chargers have been known to fail super talented quarterbacks like Herbert before. I'm worried about him becoming Phil Rivers, 4,500 yards a season, 6-12. Like no matter what, every year.
Yeah.
Freaking Philip Rivers every year, 35 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 5-11. The one year they were good, made it to the AFC Championship, got smoked by Tom, right? Like, it's just one of those things where I hope that doesn't become for him. But Trevor Lawrence, 2-6 to start last season, not good. We're getting a little worried about Trevor. All of a sudden, he turns it on and finds God mode. He finds what made him so good at Clemson and the number 1 overall pick. Not only was he the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft, he was the number 1 college recruit and could have went to any school in the nation and just walked on and been their number 1 starting quarterback. He could have went to Bama. He could have went to Florida. He could have went to Ohio State. He chose Clemson to keep the Deshaun Watson train rolling. He was good there. They won a natty. They lost 1-2. Joe Burrow in the Bengals or in the Tigers in that. So go Tigers. But yeah, we make it to the playoffs. Got a home playoff game. Go down 27-0. Uh-oh. We're going to have to talk about this all off season. Nope, never mind. They come all the way back, and Trevor Lawrence leads a third and fourth quarter run where they win a playoff game, and then they only lose by 7 to the Chiefs, who end up going on to win the Super Bowl 1 round later. I think Lawrence took a big step last year. I have him at number 5. At number 6, I do have Justin Herbert, who I think is just an absolute superstar. He has the ability. He's got the looks. He could be a YouTube quarterback. He could be a real quarterback. All the things that work out for Justin Herbert are going to lead to some success for the Chargers. I hope they give him the ability to be successful in the NFL. He's one of those guys. I think he was bottom of the league in third down plays, meaning like, I'm forgetting how to like perfectly word this, but like all the top guys we're naming, everybody on this list, even the guys below him, had fewer third down plays last season, which means they were better on first and second down. The Chargers need to figure it out around him. I hope they do. They made the playoffs last year, but they probably wish they didn't make the playoffs last year. Honestly, I would rather just miss the playoffs entirely than blow a 27-point lead. I really, truly mean that. If you told me, Vin, the Chicago Bears can make the playoffs this year, but in game 1, they're going to go up 27-0 and lose, I would say, no fucking thank you. No, thank you. I swear to God, I mean that too.
I believe you.
But number 6, Justin Herbert, can't really go wrong. I think the top 6 are pretty clearly the top 6, and then things start to get a little argumentative after the first 6.
My 6 is not in your top 6. I have Lamar Jackson.
That's right.
I have Lamar Jackson at number 6. Just because, I mean, you could look at his stats. He's got tremendous stats, but when it comes down to it, besides that, he could just win. He just wins games, just flat out. He's fast. He's elusive. He's a playmaker. He's a nightmare to the opposing defense. He's not your traditional quarterback, which maybe that's why a lot of people shit on him, because he uses his legs a lot more than he should potentially. But that's just the way he is, and it works out for him, And that's why you can't always just look at his statistics, because he does a lot more on the field than people think he does. The only problem is he's got an injury track that could hinder him, and that's why to me he's not a top 5 quarterback. But my number 7 is Trevor Lawrence, and I do think Trevor Lawrence has the potential and will move up on this list for me. He's coming. He's only going to get better, you would think. I'm worried about him on this Jaguars team, but hopefully he could prove me wrong this year so I can have him on the higher on this list next year. But Trevor Lawrence, tremendous athlete, tremendous brain. I really like Trevor Lawrence too. But yeah, he's consistently been growing over the past few years. So that got me for set. I got him at 7.
I understand what you mean for Trevor. The Jaguars, if you're not like locked in on them, they're the fucking Jaguars, right? They've been the Jaguars for all these years. I have been locked in on them just because of Black and Teal. If it weren't for Black and Teal, I probably would be thinking the same thing as you. But I've seen the weapons that they've added. I watched their entire training camp, and I watched the preseason. 3-0 in the preseason. Preseason means nothing in terms of wins and losses, but if you're 3-0, it means your team was playing well at all times, and Trevor Lawrence was a big part of that. He's surrounded by Ingram, Kirk, Ridley, Zay Jones. I love the running backs, Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby. Offensive coach with Doug Peterson, won a Super Bowl with the Eagles, won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles. I mean, give me a freaking break. I think everything's working there in the Jaguar land, and they kind of remind me of like the 2016 Cubs. Eventually, you just got to forget about how they were once a laughingstock and realize that things have changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they still got to do it for more than 1 year for people to like see. The Cubs are no longer the lovable losers. If they have a bad season, the fan base hates them and boos them. That wasn't the case 20 years ago. Before they won the World Series, they could lose a game 12-0 and people would still be going, "Go Cubs, go." It doesn't now. That's not the case. You have expectations now. The Jaguars don't necessarily have those expectations yet, but I think they will very soon.
Mm-hmm.
Losing by 7 to the Chiefs after making a 27-point comeback was an eye-opener for me. Huge eye-opener for me. And listen, I'm a little biased towards the Jaguars. I cover them more unbiasedly than the Bears, though, for sure. And I really like that pick for you there. So, but my number 7, Lamar. I put Lamar Jackson at number 7. I think when he plays a full season and he's healthy the whole year, he won an MVP. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be hard to win an MVP. You're in the AFC. You have every quarterback I named so far, except for Jalen Hurts, is in the AFC. So, I mean, it's just a dominant quarterback conference. Am I naming another? Yes, I'm naming 2 more NFC quarterbacks after this. So it's 7 in the top 10 in AFC, 3 in the top 10 in NFC. It's pretty diverse. So it's going to be hard to win MVP when you're in a conference like that and you're playing all these teams every week. I do think the Ravens are going to be a playoff team if Lamar stays healthy, of course. But I think he's just unreal. Best runner I've ever seen. He puts Michael Vick to shame. He's athletic. He got a pretty looking ball when he throws it in the air. I'd like to see him be a little bit better of a pocket passer and maybe be a little bit smarter of a runner. But, he did do that 1 year and won MVP. The Ravens are a Super Bowl contender as long as he's the quarterback. The second he's out, though, and they move to Tyler Huntley or something like that, that's a big issue. And if he has another injury-riddled season, he probably won't be on my top 10 list next year because then I will just assume he's going to be hurt the year after.
Right.
But, last year he played a majority of the year. This year I hope he plays the whole year. So I got Lamar Jackson at number 7. At number 8, I have the guy who has won 2 of the last 3 MVPs in the NFL. I'm talking about Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers would have been 4th on my list last year. Last year it was Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Rodgers. Last season, he had a down year with the Green Bay Packers. He actually had a phenomenal start. And then there was a stretch in November and late October where he was terrible and the team was terrible. And they ended up needing to win like X amount of games down the stretch to make the playoffs. They missed. The Seattle Seahawks barely got in instead of them because I think the Packers lost that Week 17 game to the Lions and that kept them out. But, Rodgers, he's going to the Jets. And the Jets are a really good team. Nobody wants to admit it because they're scared. But because they're also in the same division as the Bills. But last year, with Zach Wilson under quarterback, they still had an okay year, and Zach Wilson sucked. He was horrible. But they have corners. They have linebackers. They have a good offensive and defensive line. They have weapons. Now you insert Aaron Rodgers. Listen, it's either going to be a Russell Wilson in Denver situation or it's going to be a Matthew Stafford in Los Angeles situation. We know that those types of things where elite team adds elite quarterback late, they can go in either direction. I'm not sure where it's going to go, but I think Rodgers is going to have a good year. I have him at number 8.
I also have Rodgers at number 8.
So the same top 8, different order.
Same top 8, different order.
Barely, though.
Aaron Rodgers, this is one of the situations where a top quarterback switches teams, and I think it's going to pay off. I didn't think it was going to happen with Russell Wilson. And I thought there was another quarterback I didn't think it was going to happen with.
Tom Brady, maybe?
No.
Tom Brady
The Browns, nobody went there.
No. Well, Deshaun Watson did, but nobody knows after taking 2 years off.
I thought there was another one, but
there probably is that I could think of. If you
but anyway,
on it.
Aaron Rodgers,
Colts, Phil Rivers.
Maybe. I don't know. It could have been. But I think this is going to benefit Aaron Rodgers. I really do. Now they got Dalvin Cook, too. They got Randall Cobb.
He's their second best running back, too.
Randall
Cobb.
Randall Cobb. Yeah, they got Randall Cobb. So I think this Jets team is going to be good. And I think he still got it in the tank. I really, really do. It's not a top 5 quarterback anymore because of what I saw last year. But Can he get there and be a top 5 quarterback this year? Potentially he can. I really do believe that. So I got Aaron Rodgers at number 8. Number 9 is interesting because my number 9 is not a top 10 quarterback on many people's list. You can go look up any top 10 list you want, and there's a chance this quarterback's not in the top 10. But it's Tua Tagovailoa. I really believe Tua's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. He was injured, yeah, but you look at his stats, he's been improving every single year. And I think the Miami Dolphins are a bit underrated. They have a very, very talented team. And I think Tua helps make this team better. I really do. I think he's got a great arm. Is he complete all around? No, but he could get there. He's got things to work on. And I don't know. It just, to me, it felt right putting him here because of any of the quarterbacks left in the league. I think I'd rather him over any of them. So
that makes sense.
That was my logic. But I'm telling you, you look at a lot of lists, they're not on their list.
I didn't include him because I don't know.
You see, exactly.
But I don't know. That's why.
Yeah.
I'm not dismissing it by any means. He's won most of the games he started and finished.
Yeah.
His winning percentage is through the roof. He was great at Alabama. He was a top 5 pick. He would have been number 1 if Joe Burrow didn't have the season that he did. Because 2, 3, and 4 didn't need a quarterback, so 5 took the quarterback.
Yeah.
He would have been the number 2 pick if the number 2 team needed a quarterback. They didn't. But I mean, dude, he was the projected number 1 pick. He's got that pedigree. I love the pick. I didn't include him, but I'm not pooping on it because he probably would be. Listen, I think there's a huge drop off after number 8 because then we start getting into the middle of the pack quarterbacks, which the guy I'm going to name as number 9 used to not be a middle of the pack quarterback, but I think if he's healthy this year, he could be that guy. But I love the Tua pick. For number 9, I chose Matthew Stafford. He's probably going to play for the Rams this season. He won the Super Bowl and was great the year before. All his years in Detroit, he was unbelievable, and nobody realized it because he was on stinky Detroit. And it's like, wow, great quarterback goes to great team. Now, Russell Wilson was bad with the Broncos. That's part of the reason. If he was good, they probably would have been good. He stunk too. Stafford remained good, and that helped the elite Rams roster go on to win the Super Bowl. I have him at number 9. As long as he's healthy this year, he could come in and have a top 10 NFL quarterback season. So, as long as he's healthy and all in, he's top 10. Do I think he's on my top 10 list next year? Probably not. But I don't know, man. If he's healthy, I think the Rams are going to stink, but it's not going to be his fault. He's going to have a good year. And he's got a high weapon that we'll talk about too. Number 10, I put Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins gets a lot of hate. He's probably he's like the Nickelback of quarterbacks, but everybody knows Nickelback is actually kind of a pretty good band. So I just think he does everything right. He wins. He's not a superstar. He's a B+ quarterback. We're in B+ range now. We named the A+ Mahomes. We named the A's in Burrow and Allen. Then we got to the A- with Hurts and Lawrence and Herbert and Lamar and Aaron. Now we're at B+. We're at frickin' Stafford and Cousins. Kirk Cousins wins a lot of games. He knows what he needs to do to be successful. He's not going to sling it for 400 yards a game, but he's going to win football games the right way. Kirk Cousins at number 10.
My number 10, I think this quarterback's overrated, but when I picture the remaining quarterbacks in the NFL,
it's a huge drop off.
There's really nobody I really would want to put in the top 10. And that's kind of what I was referring to.
I think I know who you're going to pick, dude.
He's overrated, but I mean, he's got the stats to back him up. If he's on his game, he's on his game. I went with Dak Prescott. I mean, a couple seasons ago, he threw 37 touchdowns. He almost has a 5,000-yard passing season. He's got what year was it? Let's see. Hold on. 2019, he threw for 4,902 yards. 2021, 4,400 yards. So he's got a couple 4,000-yard seasons, almost a 5,000-yard season. I mean, he's overrated, but I mean, he could get it done. He could get it done. And, there's just really nobody else besides him. I really felt the need to put in the top 10.
He's on a lot of top 10 lists. I can't. He doesn't win. He's basically Kirk Cousins. They went 12-4 the last 2 seasons. I get that. But I just don't see that extra pizzazz that everybody else sees. I don't know why. He's just he's a good quarterback. I would rank him 13th, 14th.
He's inconsistent.
15th. I would rather have Tua. I would rather have Stafford and Cousins. I probably would rather have Justin Fields. And I think Justin Fields is getting to be a little overrated. But like, and listen,
He's
I'm a Bears fan. I want him to succeed. I hope he's firmly in my top 10 next year. He's 5-20, so he's not right now. But I don't
he's
hate. I don't hate
overrated,
it.
and
I
he's
hate it.
he's
You're not-
inconsistent. But when he's consistent, he gets it done. So
I understand what you mean. He's on a lot of people's top 10 lists, so I can't. It's not like you named frickin' Jimmy Garoppolo, and I have to sit here and shit on you for it. Like, it's one of those types of picks where like I have to respect it because clearly you're not the only one. But if you would have put like frickin' Trey Lance or something, then I'd be like, see, that's another thing.
dude.
If he was so good, if frickin' Prescott was so good, though, they wouldn't have traded for Trey Lance.
But I think that's just precautionary. Like if Prescott has a bad year, right? It's
I know because they probably
he's not
don't
going to
think
start.
they probably don't think Cooper Rush is going to be the answer again, like he was last year when Dak got hurt a
Right.
little bit. And there's no Andy Dalton there anymore.
And
So
Dak is another guy that is injury prone.
yeah. Frank, since we're running a little long, do you want to save wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, and defensive players for next week's episode when we're kind of going to have a football extravaganza with it being the eve of the NFL season?
Well, yeah, I kind of thought it was weird. Like we were going over it all in one go. I was like, oh, because like next week is the eve to the football season. I'm like, okay, but
yeah, no. So next week we'll do all those positions. We'll save those for next week because I think it's good to get the quarterback conversation out there a little
and I
earlier.
assume that'll be part of the third period, so I don't have to change anything. I have all my stuff written down.
Yeah, so we'll save that for next week because I didn't realize we talked to Dan for a lot longer than I thought we were going to, which is fine. I love it.
Yeah, right.
But next weekend's going to be a football extravaganza, and maybe we'll have a football-related guest that could go over these lists for us. We'll see. I have some stuff cooking for Merry Football Eve next week.
I thought it was a little weird that we weren't going to do anything before the football season.
Well, hockey's like really dry now. I've been saying that for weeks, but like there was the Carlson thing and this team and that team.
Now there's like nothing.
Now there's literally Merry Football Eve next Wednesday. I'm
excited.
Celebrating. So I'm excited too. So we'll save those for then. Really quick, what are you watching this weekend, including Big Brother? Your thoughts on Big Brother?
Well, first of all, the pressure cooker challenge, the Revenge of the Pressure
Hell
Cooker.
yeah, cool shit.
Was everything I wanted and more. I've been wanting that challenge for many, many years. Finally came back. There was a lot of nostalgia getting to watch that competition again. The Paramount Plus subscription that one of the contestants won, I forgot who won it. Do you know why that was so funny? And I think I told you this before, but you probably forgot. In the original Pressure Cooker Challenge, one of the contestants won a year of Netflix. And Netflix was hot shit back then. And now this year, like, oh, you won Paramount Plus. And then in 18 years, we'll be like, oh, remember Paramount Plus was like the hot shit back then. And so I thought that was really funny. The dreaded Fly, they released the Fly. That was hilarious.
Very funny. Is it against the rules to just kill it?
I don't think so. Like, no, I don't.
Like, I would have just taken that bitch out.
Yeah, I mean, but then you risk lifting your hand, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Didn't Nicole like lift her hand because of the Fly? The only thing, like being a super fan, I don't think I'd been able to throw a competition like that. Like I've been wanting to see it. I've waited 14 hours. It'd be so hard to be like, yeah, you could have it. You could have it. I don't know if I would have been able to. I'd want to win that competition so bad. That and OTEV are the two competitions that I'd want to win. I'd do anything for that. But anyway, Big Brother, great. Thought maybe Red could have used the veto. Sorry if nobody's caught up. Are you caught up?
Yep.
Okay.
I wouldn't have brought it up if I wasn't.
Okay, I didn't want. I wanted to make sure. Well, if anybody's watching, sorry about that. But I thought he should have used the veto. I thought for sure this would have been a time to take out Izzy. Truly, I was like, this is your chance to make a move because the trio of Felicia, Izzy, and Suri, they're gonna go after him. That's what like Suri was saying in the diary room. Like, I don't trust this guy, and like he don't think he got good graces just because he did this. Like they're talking shit about him. I thought this was the time to take it. Big Brother, excited for it. Excited for the eviction episode tonight. And the other stuff I'm watching is we actually just finished Clone Wars.
Very good. You saw season 7 finale?
Yeah, it was
where Ahsoka walks through the snow.
Yeah.
Freaking cool, man! Right?
It was. I absolutely loved it. You know, the first few seasons were kind of rough, but the last few were great. I got a lot of Star Wars still to catch up on, and I'm excited to keep on chugging along. So yeah.
Season 7 is significantly better. I'm pretty sure that's Filoni who made season 7, and they definitely had Mando, Book of Boba Fett.
It was so good.
Ahsoka, the TV show. They had all of that in mind when making that season.
Yeah.
So that definitely is the reason like that one is significantly better than the rest of them, in my opinion. But yeah, Ahsoka, first 2 episodes, dynamite. Probably going to watch episode 3 sometime within the next day or so. So I'm very much looking forward to that. That's what I'll be watching this weekend. In addition to college football, baby.
Oh, yeah. That's a
College
good one.
football, can't wait for Saturday. It's going to be so sweet.
How about tonight?
Yeah, tonight, the Gophers. That's why Dan was wearing his shit.
And not only that, we got Florida and Utah.
Hell yeah.
A
Can't
ranked
wait.
match.
I know.
Utah's
A ranked match on night 1. NIU against Boston College on Saturday. Can't wait for that too. Going to be really, really cool to see NIU take on a Power 5 school. It's not something that we say every week. So,
Yeah.
that's going to be very, very fun. Can't wait for it. And Frank, I think it's time, without further ado, to get to America's favorite podcast segment of the week, Breaking Bucks.
Where's my money, bitch?
Frank, hurry the hell up. I got to pee.
That sucks.
Just kidding, bro.
So, got 2 picks for you today.
Hey, your percentage went down, huh?
It
Talk
did.
about sucks.
It did. It went down a little bit, but that's all right.
It's
all right.
Onward and upward.
Onward and upward, and now the football season begins.
Ooh.
And there's not a lot of baseball there. There's only 4 games and one's over, so we got 3 remaining on the schedule. But I found something in the baseball world I'd like to mention, and that's the Braves and Dodgers game tonight. What a blockbuster matchup. 2 of the best teams in the MLB going at it. Strider against Lance Lynn. Blockbuster matchup. Strider went through a little bit of a cold streak throughout the year, but he's been lights out over the course of his last 3 games, only allowing 1 run over the past 21 innings of work. That's insane. Strider's a very good pitcher, and he always seems to go deep in games, as long as he's pitching well, obviously. If he's on the money, he's going at least 7 innings. Lance Lynn's been pretty good since being acquired by the Dodgers as well, but he hasn't faced a lineup quite like Atlanta's. I think the Braves jump out to a lead here, and Strider holds on to it late into the game, where the bullpen comes in and closes it out. But my pick is the Dodgers total under 3.5 runs at plus 100. I think the way Strider's been pitching is just unbelievable. This is a better Dodgers lineup from the teams he's been facing, but I think he could hold it down. He goes deep into games. If he could carry it into the 7th inning and have only given up 2 runs even, I feel confident that the Dodgers don't score at least 4 runs. So Dodgers total under 3.5 at plus 100 is what I like in the baseball world. And I mentioned college football's back tonight. Florida at number 14 ranked. Utah, college football back, baby. This game will be broadcast on ESPN tonight, and I will most likely have it on. Florida Gators are unranked, but I think they could keep this game close. I really do. It's the first game of the season for both these teams, so I could see some growing pains on both sides of the field. At the end of the season, these teams will be moving in opposite directions, I'm sure, with Florida on the fence to play a bowl game, maybe 5-7 or 7-5 is kind of where I see them. I think it could go either way, so they'll either get a bowl game or not, but it'll be very, very close. But I like Florida plus 5 in this first game. I do think they could keep it close. I think they'll keep it close. I think this line's a little inflated because Utah's at home. They're ranked, but I see it differently in my eyes. So Florida plus 5 at minus 110.
I like it, Frank. I like it a lot. That's a good breaking bet segment. I'm excited for college football. I'm excited for real football. Next week, I'm sure you'll have a line for a NFL-related game,
Yeah.
so that's exciting. Very much looking forward to it. I can't thank everybody enough for coming on in the chat and being a part of today's show. To our friend Dan Rice, thank you for joining to talk about the PWHL. We are so excited to talk about the Women's League all season long. You can make sure you read my stuff and Frankie's stuff at fansided.com. You can go to both of our Twitters to find all of our articles and content that we produce. And this is going to be a great weekend. Sports are really starting to return in full force, more than just baseball. And baseball is only getting better as the season moves along here, as the races get hotter. And if you're really into baseball, you could join in tomorrow at 10:45 a.m. when we're having a special Friday edition of Crosstown Crosstalk. To talk about the White Sox hiring Chris Getz as their new GM and executive vice president, and the Chicago Cubs are in the thick of the playoff race. They currently hold the playoff spot. So you're going to want to tune in to hear all that conversation. I'm very much looking forward to it. I believe I'll be chatting with my friends Joe Mandel and Steven Zimmerman. So that should be very, very fun. I hope to see everybody there. For Frankie Mueller, my name is Vinny Parisi. And as always, thank you for listening.